Hello, everyone. Welcome to this quick reaction video. I had to undergo some medical tests this week, so I wasn't going to do a pod, but I want to get a short one out to basically talk about the results of the election yesterday as we know them. I'm recording this on Wednesday, March 1st at about 9 a.m. Central Time, even though I'm on the East Coast. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk real quickly. Here are my reactions to what we know. First, she's gone, right? Lightfoot is history. First person in 40 years. And I think if my math is right in my head, we go back to another female mayor, Jane Byrne, I think was the last one to lose after just one term. So is part of the reaction to her racist, misogynistic, homophobic? Yes, no doubt about it. Does that mean that the reaction to her completely is wrong or inappropriate? It's inappropriate if it's based on those things, but it's also based on some other things. And let us remember, she got in because Tony Preckwinkle got caught up in a corruption scandal with Ed Burke. 2 months, a month, 3 months, a month, something like that, before the election. Otherwise, Lightfoot was going to get her clock clean. She comes in with the widest margin of victory in the runoff, and I think in any mayoral election ever. She had like 70% of the vote. Now, you also have to understand politically that some of this was based on the fact that people just in the city council viewed her as weak. So they weren't going to give her the kind of clout that Rahm or Daley had in the city council. They were going to try to extract more from her. She wasn't willing to give up that. And thus, her propensity towards being the smartest person in the room of every room she's ever walked into, and a propensity for conflict, and a propensity to make snap judgments on major issues, which, like in response to the George Floyd protests, was a major shortcoming of her and cost her in this election. Instead of telling the people that were on the street to come in and we will start a dialogue about what it would be like to change the Chicago Police Department or get rid of it and create a new public safety agency. Let's have that discussion. Instead of welcoming them in to have that discussion, she basically just made a snap judgment and said, absolutely no way. We're not defunding. We're not talking about it. No, 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 no. Ladies and gentlemen, that played out yesterday. Is she the worst mayor in probably 40 years and probably one of the worst ever in handling politics? Yes. Was she Rahm 2.0 and Daley 3.0, but shrouded in different rhetoric? You bet. She didn't do that much for brown and black communities. There wasn't much change. Yeah, she may have upped the program from like 5 million or 8 million to 30. Wow. Well, the tax increment financing program went from collecting 660 million under Rahm annually to over $1 billion. Could Lightfoot have taken a pen and got rid of most of those and sunsetted others? Yep. Did she do it? No. Why? Because she wants to keep the developers and the Michigan Avers. She wants to keep all of them happy. So she didn't do that. And thus the South and West sides did not benefit from her. And the reformers, let me back up and just say, she could not build relationships with people. She's horrible at it. You have to be able to get kicked in the teeth and still go in that room and try to build relationships. She couldn't do it. Come election time, she lost most of her allies. Whatever, I mean, I should say most of her allies. Well, whatever allies she had, most of them she lost. Wagon's Pack and 32 stuck with her. I mean, I think they all knew she was tanked. Like, I don't think these results were not something she was already finding in her polling. I think she knew she was going to get her butt kicked. And to me, this is a butt kicking if you're an incumbent mayor in Chicago. That's for sure. Is all of this somehow and sort of wrapped into the context of the pandemic and the response and the George Floyd and crime shooting up in the loop and the loop emptying and crime and violence in the CTA, a lot of which was out of her control. Yep. No doubt about it. Could have people handled COVID worse? Absolutely. 100%. I think she did pretty well there for the most part. Was the alt-right FOP's response, and I mean alt-right, the people running the FOP are extremists, insurrectionist extremists. And that's why you're starting to see, like in past episodes, Proud Boys cop, Oath Keepers cops, all the cops at the insurrection. Yeah, horrible. Is her record on police reform, does it match the rhetoric of candidate Lightfoot? Nope. Did that cost her? Yep. She was really without a constituency. Most of whatever white progressive of Chicago left her. She was basically a politician without a constituency. A lot of the people that elected her left her. She did good on COVID, but her response to the George Floyd protests, the hiring of Dave Brown as superintendent of the Chicago Police Department, David Brown, was an absolute disaster. She had brought in Charlie Beck from LA after they had to fire Eddie Johnson, and he should have been fired. He also should have been arrested for DUI and maybe conspiracy to not report the crime with the cops that showed up at the scene. That said, Brown had to go. She brought in Charlie Beck to start all these reforms. She had one of his proteges, Sean Malinowski, who was working with Chicago Crime Lab and continues to work with the Crime Lab now, as far as I know. He was in waiting. He applied. Lightfoot, whether something happened, because she was pre-interviewing the candidates before the police board gave her the shortlist, and something in that relationship didn't tick, so she hired Brown. Old school, proven liar in his misconduct. You can check it out on our website in Dallas. He got suspended for it, although they hid that from us. So she had an avenue. She brought in Charlie Beck, an old LA police chief, to bring in reforms and reform the police department. He started bringing in those reforms and to jumpstart them with the idea that the next person would continue them. And for some reason, Lightfoot took a hard right and went old school with David Brown. Maybe because he's black. I don't know. I'm taking a guess that Malinowski's white. I think I've seen a picture of him. Maybe she was just trying to support other black professionals, and you can't blame her for that, although Brown was a horrible choice. And he just basically reversed everything Beck brought in, which was a horrible, horrible, horrible thing, including one of the things he did towards the end in the last year, which was fire Bob Boyd, who was a civilian running the head of reform office, trying to bring the police department in line with the consent decree, bring in their changes, the consent decree's court-ordered changes. And Brown fired him and Lightfoot supported it. Clueless. I mean, she just couldn't do anything right. So real quick, let's turn to the runoff. Paul Vallis versus Brandon Johnson. I just texted this to a cop friend of mine. Brandon Johnson, in my view, doesn't really have a record. So I don't know. His rhetoric sounds good on cops, but so did Lightfoot. So who the hell knows what he's going to do? He's really tied at the hip to Chicago Public Schools. Paul Vallis, on the other hand, some really good ideas financially, interesting things, but to quote a friend of mine, I haven't cleared this, so I'm not going to use his name, but Vallis is kind of like a technocrat, kind of a policy wonk guy, which is fine. However, he's alt-right on policing, hard alt-right. His wife and child are cops. He's a school privatizer, so say goodbye to the Chicago Public Schools. There's going to be strikes probably every year, and he's going to try to bring in vouchers to basically dismantle the public schools. You take out 20% of 30%, 40% of the students in the public schools crumble. And this is, in my opinion, what he wants to do. It's kind of going back so on privatizing schools or on like police reform, Vallis is definitely going back to the Stone Age. Johnson sounds better, no real record to prove it. We'll have to see what happens in the runoff. Also in that text, if you just look at the numbers, Vallis is kind of like the Republican in the race for sure. So was Willie Wilson. Together, even if all of Willie Wilson's votes break for Vallis, which they won't because Brandon Johnson's black, Willie Wilson's black, Brandon Johnson will pick up some percentage of those votes. They're not enough. I don't think they're even enough if you just took the Brandon Johnson, Chuy Garcia, Lightfoot votes. Oh, Chuy, what a horrible race he ran. If you add up all those votes and you put Willie Wilson on Vallis, Brandon Johnson wins. And then you got, I don't even remember, Jamal Green, Sophia King, Roderick Sawyer. Great. Last I looked last night, he got 0.5% of a vote. What the hell was he doing in the race? But if you throw those added on top, and that's the cherry, we'll see how many. We'll have to see how many of all those votes break towards either one, Brandon Johnson or Vallis. One would think most of those votes are going to break towards Brandon Johnson. Certainly aren't going to go to Vallis, but we'll have to see. So we'll have to see. It seems like Brandon Johnson is going to be the winner, but we'll see. We got I think it's 6 or 8 weeks before the next election. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. If you want to support us, go to patreon.com. We really appreciate it. We're going to do more of these quick reaction videos. Are going to be in our Patreon. We're hoping out later this week or early next week to get out of our first of explainer videos, and it's going to be on the definition of violence. And that will be exclusively on our Patreon. So please support us. More information about the org, CJP, ChicagoJustice.org. If you want to get involved, CJPNation.org. All right, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be back with you next week with a full episode.